now call to order the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. Welcome to everyone here in Harris Hall and anyone watching online. Before we dive into business, I'll check to see if there are any adjustments to the agenda this morning. Seeing none from the dais. Administrator, no. Any emergency business this morning? None. Then we will move right on to the best and funnest thing we get to do every now and then, which is some employee appreciation. I'll turn it over to our Acting County Administrator, Greg Rickoff, to lead us through this item.
Chair Trieger, Commissioners, thank you. I'd ask that Manager Donovan Dumeier and Supervisor Aaron Rochart join me here at the table for a moment. We have, as you can probably tell, we have invited our canine therapy program to join us here this morning. I think we tricked him into doing that so that therapy is probably for himself. We could have brought Aaron forward for any number of reasons. We could praise the fact that in his own time he volunteers and has gone on 4 separate trips, a 5th trip coming up to Guatemala, where he is part of the Cascade Medical Group and is building safe and efficient stoves and putting in water filtration systems for families. We could have him here to talk about the remarkable board work and volunteer work he does, particularly around the areas of domestic violence and his support for the justice-involved women's programs. But today, we are bringing him forward to recognize him for having created the county's first, and at this point only, canine therapy program. I'll go ahead and read this. I'm going to ask you to say a few words before we turn it over to Aaron really quickly. So last year, Aaron established the first in-house canine therapy program in Lane County. Not only did Aaron research and develop best practices for the program, he also wrote the policies and procedures, trained his own dogs at his own expense to serve as certified therapy dogs. Launching a new program is never simple, and Aaron has accomplished all of this while still performing his regular duties with a commitment to quality for which he's known. In its first year, the Canine Therapy Program has responded to multiple events in promoting wellness to include weekly visits to the Parole and Probation Division. Aaron, Tanner, and Rocco is not here with us today. And Rocco is the size dog that most people expect when they hear about therapy dogs, have also responded to help other county departments when faced with loss. Tanner is getting ready to retire, but Rocco will soon have a new colleague named Churro available to respond as part of the Canine Therapy Program. It's my understanding the office helped in the naming of Churro. Thank you, Aaron, Tanner, and Rocco. Donovan, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, it has been an unbelievable blessing to have these little guys come and visit us. They visit the office about once or twice a week, and before I even get through the main door, I know that they're on site. Just the level of morale lifts with our staff, and so it has just been I think a bright, shiny light for the division, and we all look forward to it. I'll also note that Aaron has completely given of himself in the development of this program, did his own research, I think did all the certifications pieces, and really crafted the language within this policy and worked with county council and the county to really kind of move this forward for us. So it's been a lot of work on Aaron's part, but it's something Aaron does regularly in giving of himself for the division. So,
including working through all the risk and liability issues and paying for the insurance out of his own pocket, something that we have remedied in this coming year. One of the great things, either Rocco or Tanner visits on the days when we have our bargaining with the Federation of Oregon Parole and Probation Officers. You know, we're in interest-based bargaining, so we are doing this collaborative work, but we have a canine therapy with us every step of the way, and I know it produces better bargaining results when you've got a dog in the house.
Absolutely.
Aaron, would you like to say a few words?
Oh, yeah, thank you guys. Also, I couldn't do this program without the county's support. Donovan and Greg have helped a lot bringing this forward. You can always have good ideas, but sometimes they get stopped along the way, and these guys are fully supporting the rest of the county, including James Trio, wellness manager there, also helping this process, risk management, council, really helped this process forward. So Tanner's been a therapy dog since 2015. My wife kind of got into the therapy dog program, and I thought it was pretty interesting, and I wanted to do some research on it and start handling the dogs and really enjoy it. So Tanner's been working in our community since 2015. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I believe we have a certificate. And why don't we step to the back of the room and maybe we'll get a picture with you all. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Trieger, commissioners. Let's include you in this.
I feel better already just having this up right across from me. I just wanted to give commissioners an opportunity before you step away. We absolutely want to get your photo for sure. But we'll turn it over to the board if anyone wants to comment. Commissioner Bob.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being willing to take the extra time to do something like this. I know when there are large traumatic disruptions, the one thing that can really help people, or at least bring down some of that energy, is therapy dogs. And, most of us have animals at home, but they're not necessarily trained for that kind of event. And for you to go out of your way and be willing to pursue this on behalf of the county and its employees, I think is just outstanding. Thank you for what you do, and it sounds like you do a lot more than just this. I want to thank you for that as well. You're appreciated here. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a mentor of mine told me that when you share one another's heart and gives comfort, you give comfort to everyone, and then they're also inspired to give comfort. So that's one of those things that I know that you do that multiplies throughout what you do. So Aaron, thanks for being that tip of the spear of comfort. And I think that's an honorable thing. When you share your heart, you never go wrong. So I appreciate you sharing your heart in not only the workforce, but in the world at large. And your Guatemala project, blessings on that, sir. Good job.
Mr. Seneca.
Thanks, Aaron, for showing up and all your hard work. I'm looking at my two dogs on my screen. I was trying to figure out how to get a picture of all of us. I can, we all think the world of you, that, and we appreciate it. But just sitting here watching you with Tanner, you can tell he does too. You don't get much of a break from petting him before you get the nose nod. So thanks a lot for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. There's not much that hasn't been said that I would say again. It's pretty remarkable. I know my mom's therapy dog, how much it meant to her, and how much he meant to her. And I'll share with everybody in the audience, when you were sitting down there and I asked if that is Tanner's only tie or if he has a full wardrobe. And you stated that is Tanner's only tie, and I love it. Thanks for being here.
I will just echo all of the comments of my colleagues, but also just to add, I think we're also speaking for the dozens and dozens of people that you've helped that don't have the chance to directly look at you, and thank you for helping make some of the hardest times of their life a little easier. You probably don't even know how many times those folks are likely sort of hearkening back. Maybe even they don't know, right? It's a very... our nervous system is a very subconscious thing and the way it responds. And so you really, I just know you've helped dozens and dozens of people to keep themselves grounded and centered, not just in the hardest times, but then that carries forward into when they're doing better too, that is part of that. So it's really important what you've done. And Tanner, congratulations, well earned. I wish you nothing but belly scritches and biscuits. Enjoy your retirement. And thank you so much for your service, and thank you, Donovan, for bringing this really wonderful program forward. Looking forward to meeting Chiro.
All right. Thank you.
Pause for the paparazzi, sorry, to get their picture. I know, I couldn't help it. At least I didn't make the bargaining on when Greg said they were part of bargaining. I guess I just did, sorry. While our county administrator, acting county administrator is out of the room, I think we can go ahead and move forward with the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. We have a couple of folks signed up here in Harris Hall, and then I'll turn it over to Tanya to manage anyone who may have signed up to provide comment online, and then I'll come back here to the hall to ensure if anyone came in late and didn't have a chance to sign up, they can speak before us. We will take speakers in the order in which they signed up. They will be limited to 3 minutes per person. And I will call the first person and ask them to step to the podium, state your name for the record, and your timer on the wall there will begin when you do. So first up this morning is David Eigel.
Good morning, I'm David Eigel. A priest, a rabbi, and a minister all walked into a building. No, it's not a bar, and I'm not about to tell you a joke. Professor Frederick Dunn was the faculty sponsor of the YMCA on the U of O campus and was active in its activities. During the 1920s, the Y on campus provided extensive support to all students. The U of O Y Hut building served as a student union. It had game and reading rooms as well as a large hall that served as a meeting place for student gatherings. Many activities were scheduled there. In July 1920, Father Edwin O'Hara, for whom O'Hara Catholic School was named in 1978, was transferred from Portland to Eugene so that he could establish a Newman Center next to the U of O campus and to conduct research for his rural life program. There was not a U of O Newman Center building at that time. 2 months after arriving in Eugene, Father O'Hara was included in the activities of the Campus Y. An extensive series of courses related to religion and life began at the Y Hut. Eugene residents also attended. The series was intended to be non-denominational. Father O'Hara was recruited to teach a course in Christian ethics. A rabbi and a minister were also recruited to teach classes. In addition, Father O'Hara was among a group of 5 prominent men who lectured on industrial policy at the Y Hut, and the Y Hut was made available to him for meetings with students. Sadly, the U of O president's office, having failed miserably at establishing that Dunn, the proud member of one of the most heroic abolitionist families in America, was a racial bigot, is attempting to mislead the public into believing the unbelievable, that Dunn was anti-Catholic, and that even though the U of O Dunn report has been exposed as both fraudulent and incompetent, that Dunn was the chapter chairman of the local Knights of the Ku Klux Klan Fraternal Order. I'm asking that you contact the U of O president to ask for the factual basis for these assertions. I will happily be providing you with suggested questions to ask. Unfortunately, the extensive material I had already prepared for you was devoured by the cloud, and I'll have to rebuild it. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next, I will welcome to the podium Mike McFadden. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes will begin. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Mike McFadden here. Mr. Eigel, I'd be really interested someday to hear you prepare some information about General Joseph Lane and present that to the board someday, hopefully in the future. Good morning. I'd like to follow on to the public comment I gave at my opportunity last meeting. Also wanted to appreciate the further information that I heard at the Wednesday morning meeting regarding some of the background around why the public access was limited to the meeting, I think 2-3 meetings back, however many meetings back. You know, I really do think that it is important to hone in on how important it is for there to be public comment periods at meetings and public access physically to meetings. I know that, you know, legally isn't required for the board to provide that, but I dare you not to and see what happens. You know, I don't think that that would be a really wise or productive decision, nor do I think it's something that should be lightly dangled as like a maybe this will happen if you know, something isn't done or whatever. But no, I think it's like a really important thing that should be preserved at all costs when it comes to, you know, times, place, and manner restrictions on speech. I think that one important prong of that analysis to really look at, and your, you know, legal advice can really give you more information on this, but the phrase narrowly tailored is really important. So when you take actions, you need to narrowly tailor them so that they're, you know, while serving the compelling government interest, they're narrowly tailored as possible to have de minimis impact. I really found it interesting to hear more information about the threats and communications that Mr. Hijazi's been, you know, sending to people, and definitely find that concerning. But I would like to share that, there's no secret that I strongly disagreed with and opposed previous county council Steve Dingle. More than once publicly, even here at this podium, recommended that he be terminated. And so a little bit uncomfortable with, I think it's important to tease out the difference between a threat to an employee versus an employee being uncomfortable. And yeah, I think it is important to defend a safe workplace for everybody, but also, you have to balance that against, public access and free speech needs. And so, Steve Dingle at one point tried to have me banned from the PSB here, and also accused me of witness intimidation for calling him a deceitful scumbag. And yeah, that's not the nicest thing to say to somebody, but I really disliked Steve Dingle. And, calling someone a name like that is not threatening. But I think that it's appropriate to compare, the situation with Mr. Hijazi and what happened with me. Steve was unsuccessful. I was not banned from the PSB, but he tried. And I think it's really important that when you're looking at, does my employee feel safe? Are they being threatened? Versus is my employee uncomfortable? And does my employee not like what someone said? So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your public comment. Tanya, is there anyone signed up online to address the board this morning?
Let me check. If you would like to give public comment at the Board of County Commissioners meeting for April 23rd, please raise your virtual hand. I do see Ron Davis. Your virtual hand is raised. Can you please unmute?
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Would you like to be on camera?
No, not necessarily.
All right, then you may begin your public comment.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Ron Davis, and I've served on the Emerald Peoples Utility District Board for for 40 years, pretty much. Really concerned because for 3 decades now, the Emerald has been conducting a methane capture of methane from the dump, using it to generate electricity, which was used locally. And now the county is looking at taking some of the waste away, which would affect the amount of methane that we're able to produce, which means that we are reluctant to invest millions of dollars more to set up something that may be then taken away from us. So we want you to really consider looking at this option that you have where you've already spent $1.5 million to obtain a piece of property for this private corporation to put a machine on, which is going to cost millions of dollars, and separate the organic waste from the inorganic waste, and then take the organic waste and ferment that and then sell the methane to Northwest Natural, another private corporation. And that will go off in pipelines, which pipelines have a history of leaking and causing problems. So I would really employ you to sit down with Emerald and work out a contract where they feel more secure and they can continue to collect a waste, methane waste for free for the county, as opposed to going with a system that is questionable whether it's going to be successful or not, and it could cost between $100 to $150 million, which could and will affect the rates at the dump for the taxpayers of Lane County. So please represent the best interest of the taxpayers of Lane County and not the best interest of 2 corporations, which could potentially cause more pollution. So that's my point, and I would encourage you to go into the Emerald Peoples Utility District website, and there's a couple of videos there, and there's some other interesting information regarding this issue that you should become aware of and not be supporting a couple of private corporations. Support the people. That's why you were elected. That's what you're supposed to be doing, representing the people. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comments. I do not see any other virtual hands raised, so I will return the meeting back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tanya. Is there anyone else in Harris Hall who wishes to address the board? Seeing none, I will close public comment and move us on to the next item on our agenda, which is Commissioner response to public comment and or other issues and remonstrance to the board. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Trieger. And I'll look at Mr. McFadden directly. Thank you for your testimony this morning. And you've been around a long time. You've seen a lot of happenings inside this building and at City Hall when it was across the street. You probably don't go back as far as 1995, which is when I first became a Eugene City Councilor. Ruth Bascom was mayor. At the time, the Eugene City Council did allow for public testimony once a month. And it was on a Monday, in their Monday meeting once a month. Once I got there, we agreed as a board of councilors, the city council agreed that once a month wasn't adequate. So we immediately, I think in '97 is when we changed it to every Monday meeting, Eugene City Council allows public testimony. And you may not have been around when public testimony used to be a little bit different than it is today. One time I sat and watched the sunrise while public testimony was still going on. It was in June, so the sun rose very, very early that day. But public testimony is a very valuable part of our discourse, of any government body's discourse. In fact, any non-government body, public testimony should be received. And I want to thank you for your historic perspective on things and for keeping an eye on how we do things. And quite frankly, the public testimony part of the meeting is an important part to me. I hear things quite often that I've never heard before. I think about things that I maybe would otherwise not have thought about. And Mr. Rakoff, I ask questions sometimes that I would never ask, and I'm going to. It's regarding methane capture at the dump at Short Mountain. I'd like to get, at some point, a little bit of a report on the history of methane capture at the dump, the current volumes, and the projected volumes for capture at Short Mountain. That is under the presumption that the IMRF facility is built. Thank you. And Chair Trieger, if that is more than a very short report, I'll come back to the board to ask for that.
Okay. Commissioner Seneca.
Thanks for all the public comment this morning, Mr. McFadden. I'm going to echo what Commissioner Farr said. I think it's a very important part of the process, and thanks for coming here and reminding us of that. As far as Ron Davis, I appreciate your input. Keep it coming. I do think that as a Lane County Commissioner, we need to help our small local utilities. You're a crucial, critical part to our infrastructure, and a robust infrastructure is what we need moving forward. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Public testimony is my favorite part of the meeting. It's also sometimes the shortest. Maybe that's why. No, I just say that in jest. But no, the comments we make in here, I'll echo Commissioner Farr's responses. They make me think about things I don't think about, ask questions, move in a direction that maybe we aren't aware of because of the public. But Mr. McFadden, I want to thank you especially for your comments about not having the public involved in the governmental process. I dare you not to was a very convincing and bold statement that you made, and I appreciate that. I think the government, we should be aware that we're here. Our elected responsibilities are first to make sure the rights of citizens are not taken away. Second thing is we're supposed to be good stewards of tax money. So those are the two priorities that I have in my elected position, and I appreciate you reminded me of that. Ron Davis, there's a lot to be said about this. A lot of discussion still needs to be had about the IMRF and its ramifications to business and those and other things. I think what's concerning to me that you bring up also is our continuing agreements that we keep as a county, our memorandum of understanding that we have with EPUD. I want to make sure that we keep our agreements, and I appreciate you reminding us of those agreements. Thank you very much.
Looks like I'm the last one who wants to offer any response and or remonstrance. I'm going to give some remonstrance this morning briefly. On Saturday, I had the great joy and honor of representing Lane County along with James Trujillo from our HR Benefits and Wellness Department at the ribbon cutting and open house for Tip Tap Grow, which is an expanding childcare program focused on the arts and performing arts. There's an amazing visionary leader who has been providing childcare for a very small number of slots, and she, with the partnership from the county and a generous grant from a statewide organization, Seeding Justice, has been able to expand to a new, beautifully renovated site and increase threefold the number of childcare slots available at this facility, Tip Tap Grow. It is notable for a number of reasons. One, just any childcare business, which really is a small business, being able to expand in this environment where workforce is so constrained, where there is a great deal of regulation on that industry, and there should be. That's important. Regulation is important to keep the kiddos safe and the workers there. But it's a lot of hurdles for someone whose passion is to deliver a strong, inclusive arts curriculum to also manage a business and navigate all those hurdles and regulations and staff up. The county offered a generous, I think it's a $22,000, now I'm forgetting the exact number, it's in the mid-20,000s, to help secure slots for our employees, because we know childcare, as I have said many times and will continue to say, is the work that makes all other work possible. And it's one of the greatest ways to support our own workforce and help retain the exceptional staff we have here, is to help them manage in their personal lives and make sure their kiddos are in a enriched, safe environment while they're here at work. So kudos to Tip Tap Grow. It was a beautiful event, and I encourage every commissioner to find a moment to reach out to the director there, Drea Smith, and get a tour. It's just a wonderful, wonderful facility. And finally, just wishing a Chag Sameach, or Happy Passover, to everyone last night or tonight who may be celebrating. It's a profoundly challenging time to sit at a Seder table, as I gathered with friends and family. But I think we all felt it was important to remind ourselves that it really is a celebration of liberation and a hope for peace for everyone. So I wish that for everyone here as well. And with that, seeing nothing else, I will move on to the consent calendar. All items listed here are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted in one single motion in the form listed below. No separate discussion of these items. If anyone had wished to have discussion on any of these items, it would have been removed from the consent calendar to be considered separately. So with that, I'll look for a motion.
Chair, I'd like to move and approve the adoption of the consent calendar for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck to adopt today's consent calendar. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all. Moving on, we have up first Technology Services. I'll welcome our Director of Technology Services, Mike Finch, to the table, and he can introduce any other staff that are with him today. And we are here to consider Order 24-04-23-06 in the matter of approving an intergovernmental agreement with Lane Council of Governments, or LCOG, to apply for a broadband deployment grant to be administered and coordinated by LCOG, and delegating authority to the county administrator or their designee to execute the intergovernmental agreement. Good morning, welcome.
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us here this morning. Today we get to talk about broadband and work towards, in consideration of a motion towards an application for broadband deployment program funding that could help provide, broadband access to, I think, around 2,000 homes and businesses that are currently un- or underserved in our county. So the presentation will be by our partners at Lane Council of Governments, LCOG, here, Jake and Keith, to present that for you today. But I also want to thank our new Community and Economic Development Manager, Jason Harris, who very quickly came up to speed on this topic and dove into this and helped bring this forward today. So thank you to all of those. And without further ado, I'll hand it over. Are you able to get that shared? And, all right. So thank you, Jake. Are you taking it forward?
Thanks, Mike. Thank you very much, Chair Trieger and commissioners. We really appreciate the opportunity to come back to you to return to a topic that we brought to you last fall. We're really excited to share some of the progress that we've made and the next steps that we have and our ask of you. So this would not be possible without the partnership and active support from your county staff. So people like Mike in Technology Services, Jason in Economic Development, I know it's Matt McCray here in Emergency Services, and it's felt like a true partnership and a very effective way forward together. So really appreciate that. We're going to give a very brief refresher on the background and context that we laid out for you last fall, but we're really going to focus our time this morning on immediate next steps and the special request that we have of the board. So can you go to the next slide? So that request is approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Lane Council of Governments and approval of an associated board letter to commit county support for LCOG's joint application with Douglas Fastnet to the Oregon Broadband Office for funding award under the Broadband Deployment Program. We will discuss in more detail the specific support that we're going to request of the county later in our presentation. Our goal is really to illustrate to the Oregon Broadband Office the readiness and level of commitment that Lane County and its partner LCOG have to ensuring a successful broadband deployment in Lane County with this extraordinary public investment opportunity. Next slide. I do think it's meaningful to review some of the other groups that we have shared updates on broadband with in the last 6 months since we saw you last. Specifically, we brought updates about the broadband deployment project. You can see we visited with our own board, the Lane Economic Committee, the Regional Fiber Consortium, the Metropolitan Policy Committee, and in a couple of weeks, we're going to go to the Cascades West Economic Development District and give a similar presentation. The proposed project and methodology have been very well received by all of these groups, and a number of these groups are providing formal letters of support as well for the project. Next slide. There are really two fundamental principles that underlie the work that we're doing at the heart of what we're doing. One is that there is, in fact, a digital divide. A digital divide is the gap between people who have access to affordable and reliable internet service and the skills and gadgets to take advantage of those, and those who don't. And second, next slide, government assistance is critical to closing that divide. Government at all levels. Governments can influence broadband through policy, regulation, and prioritization. Equity, though overlapping directly, obviously, with policy and priority, is a distinct and critical lever that the public sector brings to broadband deployment. Governments like Lane County can support implementation of broadband deployments through permitting, endorsement, and intergovernmental relations. As was the case with the federal highway system in the 50s and 60s, or national electrification in the first half of the 20th century, extraordinary public funding is emerging as the primary way to bring broadband to everyone in our communities. Next slide. At the heart of Lane County partners' efforts to directly support broadband deployment is a clearly stated vision and goals and tactics to achieve it. The vision and these goals and tactics were presented to the county board 2 years ago first, and then again last fall. They have provided us with consistent focus in our efforts going forward, have been highly valuable. So let's look really quickly at our vision. The vision is to maximize outside funding secured by Lane County agencies and partners to address unmet local needs for affordable, resilient, high-speed internet connectivity across our county. Next. To do that, broadband should be available and affordable. Broadband should be reliable and resilient, and broadband should be fast. Next. To accomplish that, the tactics we've identified is investing in open access fiber infrastructure, strategically partnering with private sectors partners, modernizing our existing infrastructure, constructing new runs to underserved communities. Next. Growing and strengthening our interconnection facilities, encouraging broadband competition, so incentivizing and attracting a multitude of broadband providers, and making sure that we have good data and analytics, so maps and tools to capture the state. Next. You may recognize this from last fall. This is the Oregon Broadband Office's programs rollout summary. Our project proposal falls in the context of this wider landscape of opportunities. What we're going to focus on pursuing funding under is labeled as the capital projects. The Oregon Broadband Office now refers to this as the Broadband Deployment Program, or BDP. If you punch, there's another little. So just highlighting the funding opportunity among this landscape of opportunities. This program makes $157 million available for eligible broadband projects. The key factor of eligibility, you may remember, is that it will only pay for areas, you can punch that again, where that are underserved or unserved in the state. We're tracking on these other programs that you see, and we'll speak really briefly to them later in the presentation. Next. Using map data analysis of the very strict eligibility criteria for BDP funding, LCOG, in partnership with Lane County staff and other regional partners, worked to establish initial areas to focus immediate broadband attention. You may remember these 4 focus areas: West Fern Ridge, Spencer Butte, Fall Creek, and Mabel. Next. A really important element of this project is what we will be able to accomplish as public entities partnering with each other and partnering with private internet service providers. In Lane County, we have the good fortune of having a relatively competitive provider environment. We know the ISPs that are operating in our region, and we welcome their partnership. It's genuinely not something that we can go alone with right now. We have to align our vision, goals, and offerings with an entity looking to do the same sorts of things. Next. We introduced our planning process for securing a private partner to the board last fall. We are happy to report that our process was successful in finding a good match. To catch you up quickly, we worked directly with Lane County to put out an RFP for ISP partnership. We did that in November. 7 local ISPs responded to our RFP for partnership. We convened a multi-agency review committee that recommended 1 ISP for partnership, and Douglas Fastnet had the highest rated response, and Douglas Fastnet is our partner on the project. Douglas Fastnet is a for-profit subsidiary of Douglas Electric Cooperative. They have been successfully operating for nearly 25 years. DFN has clearly exhibited engineering, financing, marketing, and construction competency. We are so happy to have them as partners. Next. Once we commenced with DFN in our partnership, we discovered a number of other areas where DFN presented unique opportunities for service partnership. You can see in this map areas of green that have been added to the project's footprint, including areas in Douglas County. We call these the DFN opportunity areas. The density of addresses are not as significant in the newer areas and are smaller in general, but they do represent an opportunity for larger impact, greater efficiencies, and higher application scoring. According to state data, our project now represents 2,006 unserved or underserved locations, including 196 businesses and 1,810 residences. This slide summarizes the proposed and existing roles and other agreements that underlie this project. As you can see, DFN and LCOG have executed a cooperative agreement for co-application for BDP. In that agreement, DFN has committed to be the lead applicant, to be the sponsor, so they carry the liability, really, of the project. They will lead the engineering and construction. That's the work that they have expertise in. They have generated the nuts and bolts of the budget. They will provide their standard promotion and marketing. They will provide operator expertise. They will provide compelling customer service, which is one of the ways that they rated very high in our evaluation. They will also offer up at a market rate So open access, meaning they will not be exclusive about the connectivity that is interregional in what they are developing. And so they will offer at a market rate, which is not commonplace for most private entities, meaning that the work that is being funded by the public will enable additional opportunities. They will also hit enter on the application. Although we've done the majority of the work, they will be the ones who technically submit. LCOG has proposed obligations under both a cooperative agreement and this proposed IGA with the county. LCOG commits to map and diagram the constructed assets, to add promotional and adoption efforts in the project areas, to provide administrative support, to ensure transparent partnership, to foster local, regional, and state broadband relationships, to regularly inform Lane County of project progress, successes, and needs, and to leverage our own matching funds where possible and practical. The county has proposed commitments to provide right-of-way expertise and leverage, to provide assistance in relations around local, regional, and state partners, including our utility partners who are under a lot of stress right now. That is something that we saw as highly valuable from the county to help us negotiate as the county has in the past quite effectively. Assistance with promotion and adoption, policy and legislative expertise and leverage, which the county has always been so effective at, and additional match funds where possible and practical. Next slide. The total budget for this project is a $16 million project.
60?
16, sorry, 16. The ask of the state broadband deployment program is $9 million, and the match, which the overwhelming majority is Douglas Fastnet, is a $7 million match that Douglas Fastnet is bringing to the partnership. The resulting cost per location, which is a critical variable that the applications are being evaluated on, would be $4,500 per location, which is, we believe and understand to be a very competitive cost per passing. So the cost of each location being served. Next. The schedule for the project is summarized in this slide. You will see that the awards are expected this summer. Contracts should be executed in the early fall, and then the project will commence through 2025 and is required to be fully completed by September of 2026, and all reporting has to be done by the end of 2026. And so you can see the steps. It's going to be a crunch, but if anyone can do it, the partner that we have secured can do it. Our next slide here. DFN, DFN, although DFN will be carrying the lion's share of the workload over the project time, LCOG and Lane County staff will have plenty to keep us busy in the area of broadband. Circling back to our Oregon broadband programs rollout, you can see that there's plenty to stay on top of, both in terms of federal opportunities and local efforts as well. The largest pot of money that you'll see on here on the horizon is the BEAD program. It will bring approximately $700 million to the state. BEAD will overlap with the BDP project to a substantial degree, and although we have been involved in regular meetings around BEAD, so we've been doing quite a juggling act in the last little while. They both focus on unserved and underserved areas, but BEAD is a rather nuanced program. It has a very different set of expectations and a broader sweep. The BEAD program is really intended to pick up the pieces. So it's intending to, by school district area, go in and get those last remaining locations. We really see an opportunity, again, for public-private partnership with BEAD as well, and that's what we're working on. Hope to bring something to you all later on that. We were also staying on top of the digital equity program that the state has issued. They have a digital equity plan that was approved. That came with a $9.9 million award to fund some of the initial implementation for the first components. We are participating with a regional group called the Oregon Broadband Equity Coalition, led by Oregon State Extension, the nonprofit statewide network Link Oregon, and our own Broadband Action Team facilitators. This group is helping us get ahead of opportunities, as many of us are nose deep in these other programs. In addition to these funding programs, LCOG is also leading regional partners through a handful of other long-standing broadband initiatives, like getting more regionally organized around broadband mapping, finally formally coordinating on Dig Once opportunities, and coordinating on other regional projects. These and other outstanding initiatives will require attention, partner support, and partner funding to address adequately. So last slide, to reiterate our ask of the board today. We are seeking today approval for this intergovernmental agreement that reflects our partnership, approval of an associated board letter, which is a requirement of our application, to commit county support for LCOG's joint application with Douglas Fastnet to the Oregon Broadband Office for funding through the BDP program. And with that, close our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Finch, do you want to add anything before I turn it over to the board?
No, I think that was a good summary. I guess I'll add, this IGA is really just in-kind support for those things which we do as a county. There is no funding coming from us to this project, so I just want to highlight it's not a funding-related agreement.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. To the board. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Boy, I applaud this type of project. The partnership that you're describing, and DFN, you had 7 applicants, and they were the successful applicant. And DFN is a for-profit auxiliary of Douglas Electric Co-op.
That's right. Yep.
Excellent. I love that kind of relationship also, where they can actually do leverage the type of money that a private agency can leverage, for-profit private can leverage. And I'm looking at the balance that you stated that DFN is putting $7 million of their own money into this, is what your pie chart showed, and roughly.
There's a combination of cash and in-kind. They're putting a substantial amount of essentially their labor in kind. And then also the assets that they have that they bring to the project in kind.
And their expertise, of course, that they've demonstrated, obviously being the successful applicant out of 7 that applied. And to me, as an example of looking at all avenues to get the best possible result, you've described $4,500 per household. I would have guessed a lot more than that, you know, when you think about the infrastructure that's going into place. And Greg Rickoff, you might remember when eWeb was first wanting to put a fiber network downtown back in 97, 98, 99, something like that. And Deborah Smith was making presentations that we're going to use the steam lines that are in existence. Boy, we've come a long way since then, haven't we? Now, what's really particularly impressive and particularly exciting is that we're really hitting those last pockets of Lane County that currently doesn't have the kind of service that we who live inside of the general metropolitan area enjoy. And to be able to do it at in such a cost-effective manner. I applaud the partnership. I applaud the work that's gone into this, and most rigorously, I applaud not just this, but the results downstream, the net results of not just providing those 4 pockets that you put on the board, including Mabel, which I didn't even know about, but really what can be done beyond that. So bravo, you have my full heartfelt support on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a while to get to this point. I remember when we were putting together that vision statement several years ago. And now it's kind of coming to fruition. It's about a year, 2 years of putting work in order to take advantage of these new programs. And a lot of them are in the district that I represent. And so, of course, rural broadband is one of my favorite topics. So I appreciate all the work that you've been able to continually put into this effort along with your regular job. Because this is so vastly important to those people who live in those communities. They essentially have 0 internet in those areas. And so they cannot connect to the 21st century. They can't, connect for school, medical, work. They can't upload for just being able to do business transactions. It just doesn't happen for them. And in the 21st century, with the technology that we have today, this shouldn't be the case, and we're making sure that they are going to be served with this program. I'd love to be able to do more programs like this with $167 million out there. I want another one. But I know just this one alone is a lot of work. And we don't have extensive staff, but we have enough to get some of that money back to Lane County. And not only are we able to serve these communities in partnership with Douglas Fastnet, but we're able to continue with that partnership on open access allowances. And that's huge, because that just means you're going to be able to continue to serve more people in those surrounding areas. And people are able to make a profit off this sometimes too. I mean, they can start their businesses in these areas now, once it's installed. And that is economic development in our rural communities that is non-existent right now. That's incredible. This is just another example, as Commissioner Farr said, of our public-private partnerships that are so successful. And I hope we can continue on. And I was wondering if we had any great ideas already for the BEAD program and what we'll be able to ask for next.
Your thoughts about that, Keith?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, BEAD is a very different program. For anyone who might be tracking on it, it is semi-mandated that all locations within, or all un- and underserved locations across the nation are to be served with this funding. It's unclear whether or not there will be enough funding to do that, but you know, in Lane County, these 2,000 addresses that we're hoping to serve with this program represents about a fifth of our un- and underserved locations. So theoretically, with the BEAD program, it's administered by school districts, and you have to apply for full school districts. So there is some challenge in that, you know, some of these school districts might require cooperation between multiple ISPs to get it served. So we're working out the nuances of exactly how to be a good partner in that, and it might require working with a lot more ISPs than we do in this program. So we're still getting our feet under us. I mean, the BDP program was a huge lift, and now we have a lot more information underlying all of our assumptions. So we're hoping to put together a good program around BEAD as well. But the goal is to serve every un- and underserved location.
And just so everybody knows, an ISP is Internet Service Provider. And
Oh, yes, sorry. I live in acronyms.
don't we all? But I just want to give a shout out to our local internet service providers. They are the ones that are actually connecting people and are competent and transparent and out there connecting with the community, especially in our rural communities. The larger internet providers are just not the ones that are serving the people locally, and I want to thank them and all of them that actually, all 7 that actually applied, because I'm hopeful that there'll be future programs that the other ones can again apply for, and we'll be able to work with multiple ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question to Commissioner Buck's question. Is that requirement that the whole district for schools opt in, is that a federal requirement? Is there any opportunity to apply for waivers to that?
It's the statewide program. The official rules have not been released for it's part 2 of the BEAD handbook. There was a lot of feedback on the school districts. I know that there was a lot of ISPs or internet service providers that responded in the feedback opportunity to say that that was going to be a hard lift for them to apply for full school districts. But I know the intent of that was that the broadband office wants to be able to directly compare projects by zones rather than have these semi-overlapping projects that they were going to have to weed out certain areas to make sure that every address gets served. So I understand the intent, but it is going to be tricky to navigate.
Thank you. Yeah, putting a pin in that in the back of my mind as maybe an opportunity for some advocacy for them to reconsider what boundaries they are using to define. I mean, just if it's a statewide program, we have 16 school districts in Lane County. They're not an apples to apples thing, county to county. So for a state policy to apply in that way is maybe there's some room for improvement there. Thank you. Commissioner Senega.
Thank you. I'll just start off by saying you have my full support. I spend a lot of time in our rural communities, and it's a huge topic, much to what Commissioner Buck was saying. It really puts some people behind the 8 ball when they can't compete in virtual work and things like this, it's the direction everything's headed. Great presentation. Every time I had a question, it was answered. I mean, it was it was set up perfect. But I do have one question. I wrote down 2,000 unserved locations. Is that just in Lane County?
Yeah, so our project proposes 2006 un- and underserved, with the majority in Lane County, the overwhelming majority. You saw a few little areas in Douglas County. They really represent under 300 addresses. That is our project. So there are a lot more un- and underserved addresses in the county.
Right.
Yeah. I think, do we know that number offhand?
That was
Certainly looked at it a lot.
that was the number I was going to
You
ask.
said it was a fifth. I think it is somewhere around just above 10,000, 10 to 11,000.
And that number doesn't exclude metropolitan areas, so there's some outliers in the data that the state gave us that are within city limits that really aren't going to, they don't really apply. This funding is aimed at rural, rural citizens, unless there's a pocket, that we could serve. But if it's just a onesie, twosie address, it's not something we're gonna drive a full fiber project to in this.
Right.
You
So
mentioned the number of businesses as well as residences. Can you repeat those numbers?
Yeah, the number of businesses is about 190, and the residences is about 18, just over 1,800.
Gotcha. No, those were the numbers I was looking for. Rickoff, thank you. Okay, so what do we tell the other 8,000? Help is coming. So you hear a lot about, they call it, I think, final mile? Last mile, yeah. What do we tell our constituents that are
We
waiting?
have the convenience right now. If this was this extraordinary 157 million was it, I think it would be a tough message to say. It was a pretty quantitative process. It was a lot of like, what's the cost per passing? Where are the concentrations? How can you deploy efficiently? I think the good news we have is that the BDP project is kind of the dress rehearsal. That's how we've been referring to it, as this way to kind of acclimate to the federal funding, how OBO is going to be looking at the Oregon Broadband Office. And BEAD we're on the coattails of BEAD, so we're going to have this other opportunity we're going to make every effort that we can to get every location in the county served with those BEAD funds. It is 700 million as opposed to 157 million, so it's not sloppy seconds. I mean, it is the big push. Everybody's been pushing towards that, recognizing that some of these addresses are a dot that's out in the middle of nowhere that you almost can't see a street going to, or a driveway. So they're the tricky ones, but it's a big chunk of money that's coming to Oregon, and we're poised to bring as much of that to Lane County as necessary. And I think we're exercising the muscles to do as good a job as we can with that as possible.
Yeah, that $4,500 price point's gonna go up a bit. Yep. Got it. Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks for everything.
The time frame might be worth reiterating too, because this BDP program needs to be administered through the end of 2026, and the BEAD program is a 5-year program for construction. So we have a lot more time in that program to actually do these longer builds. So this was all about getting ones that could be constructed in this very short time.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I echo all the sentiments and accolades, Jake. You're doing a great job, and the way you're explaining it, when you came to the Metropolitan Policy Committee, you explained it really well. We got a lot of information from you, and I appreciate the way you organized it for those who aren't, quote, computer geeks, as we call them, right? I can almost imagine that this is, to some people, like when the telephone came out. When you talk about the digital divide, you talk about, when everybody was talking on some device and communicating, and there was people that were still just had to ride their horse somewhere and figure out if they were going to have the right grocery list. And I can't imagine riding my horse and forgetting my grocery list when it's 20 miles back behind me at the farm. So you couldn't call anybody and get that. So that's what I imagine this digital divide is, and that's what I think is so exciting about this program. friend of mine in college, when they were talking about having the digital technology coming to photography when I was in school, we all kind of scoffed at it. But my professor said, well, there's two choices you have in the future: is you either become somewhat of a computer geek or you remain a carrot picker, is what he said. And so I kind of envision, people that are out in the rural farms are probably thinking like, hey, come on, we want to get up to speed, and this really helps them. And at $4,500 when you first said that, I thought, wow, that's a lot of money. But then when you said it was a good deal, I thought, well, someone's got to be making some money off this to make that a good deal, because that seems like a little bit higher than what I would have thought. But I'm glad that we can do it, and this money's available, and push on. You got my 100% of support. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think before I ask for a motion, what's already been said has been said, but I want to really elevate something Commissioner Buck sort of ran through in her list of things, which is access to medical care, that without broadband and internet access, that is so much the movement toward that we're making in medical, including mental health care, how much telehealth happens, and that for rural folks, not only is it curtailing their access, but it's just making it easier for them not to have to travel in town if they can even find a provider. It's a whole other conversation, different agenda item for a future date, but the crisis of access to care in terms of how many providers are even available for folks in our local community for primary care and mental health care is only getting worse. So the more we can open that world up past the borders of Lane County for people who live in Lane County, the better. So thank you for this work. With that, I will look to the board for a motion. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have the great honor of moving Order 24-04-23-24-04-23-06 as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Buck, seconded by the Vice Chair to approve Order 24-04-23-06, approving the IGA. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Passage 5-0. Passage of Order 24-04-23-06 in the matter of approving an intergovernmental agreement with Lane Council of Governments, or LCOG, to apply for a broadband deployment grant to be administered and coordinated by LCOG, and delegating authority to the county administrator or their designee to execute the intergovernmental agreement. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to LCOG for this, and we look forward to hearing a report back on how things are going. Thank you. Moving on to item 8 on our agenda, County Administration. Our next item is a report and discussion. This is our quarterly holiday farm fire recovery update. So I will welcome our Disaster Recovery Manager, Matt McCray, to the table and have him introduce any other guests presenting with him today.
Chair Trieger, Vice Chair Lovell, Commissioners, good morning, and thank you for making time on your schedule for us. I have with me Neil Barrett. He's with Oregon Housing and Community Services, and he's going to provide an update on the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program, known locally as ReOregon. So I'm going to provide about 10 minutes of update on recovery broadly, and then I'll hand it over to Neil to provide an update on the ReOregon program.
As they're getting the presentation up, I'll just remind the board this is a report and discussion item. We don't have any action to take today, so great.
Thank you. And we'll try and keep our comments to 25 minutes or less collectively to leave the bulk of the time for conversation and questions. Very briefly before we get started, I'm just going to ask you all to help me and those who are listening, just with setting cultural expectations. As you are all aware, it's been 3.5 years since the Holiday Farm Fire, and I just want to acknowledge that there are a number of people still living without homes, literally living in RVs on their property. Many of the trees are gone, exposing many people's properties, and it can feel very exposed for residents who live upriver. And I just want to call out the importance of us as Lane County staff, our partners, as well as people who are new to recovery, just thinking about how we interact with survivors, that we try and be as respectful as possible. And in particular, for people taking on new projects like documentation of recovery, taking photos of recovery, things like that, especially for people who are not from within that community. It can be very jarring to see that happening if you're not familiar with what's going on. And I just encourage partners to reach out to the fire district as an easy place to check in. The fire districts, in my experience, at least in the Mackenzie, the folks there are very familiar with the residents, can provide introductions, and can help folks who are trying to do good project work to do that in a way that's collaborative with survivors. So thank you for taking a moment and allowing me to speak to that. And with that, I'm just going to go right into a standard set of slides that you've seen, a couple of them, and then some updates. Thank you, Neil. So these numbers continue to change, and the next slide will show these in over the course of time. But I just want to hit very quickly on the number of dwellings that are completed. We've seen 186 of the 517 dwellings that were lost that have now been fully completed, and nearly 50% that are completed or permits or in the permit process. So we're making progress. You'll see on in the next slide that it's not moving as quickly right now. We've seen a little bit of a flattening of construction. I also want to highlight, as I do regularly, that 517 is the numbers of roofs that were lost, permitted dwellings, but there are certainly more people living indefinitely in RVs who are not counted within that number. So this is the same figures, just showing you kind of longitudinally. On the left there is October of 2021, and on the very right we have April of 2024. And so we are seeing the builds slow down somewhat. I suspect that that's going to kick up this summer. I know that there's a lot going on, and I'm going to hit on that very briefly. But we are seeing some slowing clearly in the numbers there. Next slide, thanks. And this is the great part where I get to highlight some progress. For those of you who know Melanie Stanley, she's in Blue River. She owned the general store there. And this is a drawing of her soon-to-be constructed new building. She's in the process of getting permits and hopes to break ground in the next month or so. So excited to see that building get started here very soon. Next. This is the O'Brien Memorial Library under construction in downtown Blue River. It's just great to see buildings going up. I know it's been a long slog for a lot of people to get here, and it's great to see the reconstruction happening. This building, the Upper Mackenzie Rural Fire Protection District, built a new fire station in downtown Blue River. It is now completed, and they have a certificate of occupancy, so they are now moving in, which is also really great to see. Thanks. And this is the building for Mackenzie Wellness, which will house the Orchid Medical Clinic in downtown Blue River. It's right next door to that fire station that you just saw. Again, just great to see the progress going on here. Within downtown River, two upcoming events that I want to call your attention to. The Blue River Community Plan, which is being completed as a part of the Transportation Growth Management process we've talked about over the past year or so. The Blue River Community Plan, there will be a forum up in Blue River on April 30th. So it'll be an opportunity for residents to see the draft plan and provide comments, and it's just exciting to see that process moving forward because it will have implications for land use, for what's allowed to be built from here, going here on out. There's also a Blue River celebration in downtown Blue River coming up May 11th that I invite you all to. I know it will be a big community celebration of many of these buildings going up and becoming occupiable. Next. And then just down the road, a short ways, is Lazy Days. You probably all are familiar with that. We lost a large number of modular homes or manufactured homes at that site in the fire. So Homes for Good is now under contract for construction of 20 modular units that will go on this site. What you're looking at here is the community building, which is being finished on the inside right now. So this will serve as a community hub for the residents at this location. And these are the pads that are being poured in preparation for those modular units to be delivered this fall. I just have to take my hat off to the team at Homes for Good who've done an amazing amount of work to get us here. It's been not easy. It has been really a challenging process the whole way, and they are persistent and talented, and I really appreciate their effort. So moving on, I'm going to touch on a handful of projects that are in process. Neil can speak more to this about the peer selection process and the community development block grant funds, but I'm going to take some of the opportunity to share these projects just because it is exciting to see these moving. So we have convened a peer selection committee. This is a group of stakeholders, most of whom live upriver. PEER is the Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Revitalization Program of ReOregon. So this is 10% of the $422 million available statewide for ReOregon. And in the Holiday Farm fire, that equates to about $7.9 million that will be available for planning, infrastructure, and economic recovery activities. The selection committee just made these recommendations last month that these projects get moved forward to be able to provide an application to Oregon Housing and Community Services for ReOregon funding. So I'm going to very quickly touch on all of these just to let you and listeners know what we're talking about. We are working with Community Lending Works, which is a remarkable partner. They are a part of Devon Northwest. It's a sister organization, and they are working with us to develop a business recovery fund. So we'll set aside $1.5 million that will be available to business owners to help business owners rebuild. The next one is the McKenzie School HVAC. So that is heating, ventilation, and AC and air handling in the McKenzie School District buildings that will support some upgrades of the HVAC system. There's also funding being recommended for the food pantry. The food pantry is currently running out of a church, and this would give the food pantry its own building in downtown Blue River, which would be really helpful. We're also seeing water suppression tanks being supported. McKenzie Fire and Rescue is going to be applying for those funds, and that will provide water tanks up and down the valley to enable fire suppression activities to happen more effectively and efficiently when they're needed. The next one is Highway 126 Communications Conduit and Cable, and I just want to take an opportunity because we just heard from the team at LCOG. The same group that was here, Jake Callister, Keith Testerman, and Michael Wist, have all been working with us at Lane County in partnership with the team at Lane Electric Co-op to seize an opportunity to bury communications lines at the same time power lines are being undergrounded going up 126. It's a huge opportunity. And I just want to say that the collaborative approach from the team at Lane Council of Governments is really appreciated, and it really makes me really happy to see them here and getting approval from you all for an IGA. This is just crucial in my view, and there's a short window of opportunity here with this project at McKenzie, and I'm certain we'll be back in front of you in the very near future to cement some of those commitments from the organization, including $500,000 that we'll be applying for of these ReOregon funds to support, again, communications conduit and cable going up Highway 126. Last two, Blue River Park repairs and improvements, $750,000 is being requested and supported by the Peer Selection Committee for improvements in Blue River, in downtown Blue River. And lastly, the McKenzie Community Track is seeking funds to make upgrades to the track in Blue River. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide. Thanks. And this is just the last point here. In our January update, you all very promptly supported a grant agreement with the Long-Term Recovery Group, Mackenzie Valley Long-Term Recovery Group. So we have taken state grant funds that are available specifically for wildfire recovery, and we've allocated $1.3 million for a rapid rehousing program. So the Long-Term Recovery Group has done a tremendous amount of work working with survivors to figure out what survivors need, what they want by way of housing. These funds were allocated by you all in January, and there are buildings currently under construction today to get folks into housing this summer. This program is prioritizing seniors and families with disabilities. This funding will support 8 homes with 12 people occupying them, including 2 minors. And I just want to shout out a few names here. Nelda Ingstrom, Shelley Pruitt, and Mary Ellen Wheeler just did a tremendous amount of lifting at the Long-Term Recovery Group to make sure that they paired the right survivors with the right homes, and they just did a tremendous amount of work to get this program to happen. So thank you to that crew. That's all I have for comments. Chair, I leave it to you to decide if you want to take comments on this, or if you want to go to Neil's presentation on ReOregon and then do comments all at the end.
Does the board have a preference?
I would suggest finishing.
Do the full,
Great.
do the full presentation and then
Perfect.
hand it over.
I'll hand it over to my colleague Neil Barrett, who works with Oregon Housing and Community Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Good here. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. So I'm Neil Barrett. I have a really long title. Interim Chief External Affairs Officer for Oregon Housing and Community Services, Disaster Recovery. For the last year, I've actually been assigned as a regional coordinator to Lane County. So I've been lucky enough to sit next to Matt and Megan and his team for hours and hours and hours over the last year. And it's been great. So I'll highlight them a little bit later. But some things I wanted to cover for you guys today. An overview of our ReOregon programs. We've just recently launched our HARP program, so I want to kind of dig a little deeper into that, and then obviously leave some time for questions. So ReOregon is the preferred term for CDBG-DR block grants, just for the sake of acronyms. And so CDBG-DR funds are focused on long-term recovery efforts, address unmet recovery needs. They can't supersede other funds, so if folks had insurance payments or WIRA funds that were out last summer, those would have to be used prior to receiving these funds. And then the prioritization is low, moderate income folks. That's where the folks will serve first, and we'll move on as we get into later stages. So our timeline, and again, this comes up a lot because it has been so long since the fires occurred. And so in September of 2020, we had the presidential declaration of the disaster. The following September, the allocation of the $422 million, and then we had to go out for public comment in order to create our action plan, and then that was approved in September of 2022, and then about a year ago, we finally got the grant agreement in order to start building and creating these programs. And we're super excited that about a month ago, we launched our initial eligibility questionnaire for the HARP program. As Matt mentioned earlier, we have the PEER project, which he already mentioned the businesses that, or not businesses, all of them, but the projects that have been moved forward from our selection committee. And I just wanted to take this moment to thank Matt, his team, Megan, Julie Fisher, who helped convene and lead these meetings. I think we might be at 12 meetings that we've had since about June of last year. And it was a long slog of learning new information as we were developing the PEER policy and the manual and the program. So their grace and the pace of this has been great, and I think you guys should feel very lucky to have these folks leading this charge. Not all counties have a position like Matt has, and so it's a really good conduit as we try to work through these things. So much thanks, Matt. So the next steps for PEER. So right now, we have a fantastic PEER grant manager that's worked closely with Lane County and the rest of the state. And so they are reaching out to the selected projects that we listed previously to help walk them through the application process, providing technical assistance with the goal of, as the applications are submitted, that we've already tried to navigate the confusion or the issues that might make an application not eligible. So we're trying to help folks have an airtight application to, once it does get into our system of record, we can start moving funds as quickly as possible. So May 31st, we're hoping applications will be submitted. That's not a firm due date. I'm a former educator, so we will allow for late work. This isn't, we're not trying to move anybody away from this, but that's a good target for when we'd be able to start entering stuff into the system of record. And then from month of June, we'll be reviewing those and hopefully getting into grant agreements and starting some funds flowing. And next we have HOP, our Homeownership Opportunities Program. So this program is designed for renters at the time of the fire with the hope of providing homeownership opportunities, a couple possible pathways, state-funded housing development, and subsidized or low-interest loans or down payment assistance. Our current status with this project is a few weeks ago, our director, Ryan Flynn, sent out county allocations for the HOP program. And we currently have a survey out to all renters that were renters at the time of the fire. Our data on renters currently is very outdated and missing, and people move throughout different states of being, whether when they're in their recovery. So the hope with this rental survey is to gather data to help support policy development so that we're actually capturing the needs of the folks right now. So once we receive that aggregated data from the renter survey, we'll meet with Lane County and to discuss next steps with HOP. There will be a substantial action plan amendment, or a SAPA. So once we have the rental survey, we'll meet with the counties, and then OHCS has to present a SAPA to HUD, and that is about a 90-day process that includes a 30-day public engagement. So that's kind of like the next steps in how we're going to move through HOP and get that open and running. HARP, our Homeowner Assistance and Reconstruction Program. This is what we'll spend the majority of the presentation on, and so this is for homeowners at the time of the fire to rehabilitate, reconstruct, or replace. Has opportunities to provide elevation if needed. That's more of a floodplain thing. Lane County there's a lot of floodplain issues, but from the data we have and the survivors that are remaining, there shouldn't be too many floodplain issues. But fire hardening, green building standards, and there could be certain cases where a family is nearly almost complete with their build, but they have accessibility needs, and so HARP could provide, ramps or bars in a shower or whatever it is to get them into an accessible house. So HARP phasing, we're currently about to launch, or in the middle of launching phase 1. And so phase 1 folks will be at or below 80% of the area and median income. And I'll show those numbers here in a second. And then moving on to phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 2 would serve 80% to 120% of the AMI. And then if we have funds available, moving to a phase 3 that would have no income limits. The timing for phase 2 and phase 3 will be based on how well we serve the first 80% and below, making sure that we've made that demographic whole and housed, and then use the remaining funds to move on to phase 2 and 3. To be eligible for HARP, you had to have owned your home, and it needed to be your primary residence, and you still have remaining construction or replacement needs, and it had to be a single-family manufactured mobile home or a owned unit in a multiplex. And so these are the 80% or below 80% or below area and median income, and these numbers actually became out of date last week. So every year HUD disperses new numbers. Because of my due date to turn this presentation in, they've all jumped up a little bit. So if the 47,250, that's more like 49 and some change. So everything is increased between 2 to 3 and up to $5,000. So this is a net positive, I think, for the community. Some of those folks who may have missed out just on the cusp of that initial eligibility, we're going to reevaluate everybody who missed that first window to make sure we can capture them if they do qualify for phase 1. And I'll have these numbers, the updated numbers, sent to you guys. So our application process, so we launched the eligibility questionnaire on March 25th. And the reason we did an eligibility questionnaire is because it's only about a 15 to 30-minute process. Most folks were able to do this with just the knowledge off the top of their head instead of the full application with documents and pages of things to submit. So we didn't want to have folks go through that entire application process without first having an initial eligibility determination. So we currently we have responded to statewide almost 800 eligibility questionnaire respondents. I'm not sure, I sent some data this morning to Megan Harry-on, so if you haven't received that yet, you'll have up-to-date Lane County data from this morning. The HARP application will launch on April 29th. We're actually going to spend that day working with our subrecipients and intake specialists. There's a lot of nuance and moving parts to the application with both an online, paper application, Spanish and English. So we were going to spend a day on the 29th making sure all of the folks supporting this effort are comfortable. And then on April 30th, Phase 1 eligible folks will receive an email with instructions on how to start the HARP application process. And the application review will take about 4 to 6 months. Eligibility review, duplication of benefits review, environmental review. There's a lot of steps and pieces to get towards a grant agreement. Again, here's these numbers are from April 8th, so they're quite outdated, but you can kind of see a snapshot statewide of where folks were responding, and this is to the eligibility questionnaire. And I will say for Lane County, because we work so closely with the LTRG, that this actually is right about the numbers that Lane County expected, at least as of this date. There's certainly more folks out there, and their outreach is continuing, but at least they felt good about their initial outreach work that they did in capturing the folks. And finally, I do need to highlight the McKenzie Valley Long-Term Recovery Group. So they are a subrecipient of OHCS, so they're conducting outreach services and intake services for the HARP program in the community. So they can go to somebody's house if they need to travel upriver. They have office space both in downtown Springfield, and I believe they're also utilizing the Leesburg Fire Department to remove as many barriers as possible. We know a lot of these folks are low income or elderly, and reaching them and providing them with excellent services is the goal. And Devin's team at the LTRG is they're steadfast. They get after it, and it's been a pleasure to work with them and support them. And yeah, we got good partners between Matt and Megan and the LTRG, and they're really supporting the work that OHCS is trying to do. So I'll open up the question.
Great, thank you. And if I could ask you to take the screen share down, just make it a little easier for the online viewers. Thank you so much for the presentations, both, and I will open it up to the board for questions, comments. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. If the board will indulge me a little bit, we actually have a staff person from OHCS, so I want to take advantage of this particular moment. I think as we saw in the beginning of the presentation, we're seeing a culmination of a lot of work over the past 3 years in order to see some more substantial buildings going up. But clearly, we have not rebuilt the entire community in the residences. We've been able to work really hard to get funding and resources for those community buildings, and we're going to see a lot of that come to fruition this summer, and that's really wonderful to see for the community. Each and every one of those buildings is really just a symbol of progress towards recovery for everybody in the community, and keeps people going. A lot are still feeling a lot of trauma each time that they're up there. And each symbol of progress keeps them with hope in being able to recover on their own. It's been 2 years since the PEER money has been approved by Congress. 2 full years. is far too long for us to be able to get this money out the door and into the hands of survivors. And the bureaucracy in order to get that funding out has been absolutely incredible and frustrating for both residents, our staff, myself, and the larger community. It's it shouldn't be that way, and we should be able to learn a lot of lessons from this for the next time in recovery, because I foresee this will not be the only time that we will see an incident like this in the state of Oregon or in Lane County. More specifically, for our representative from OHCS, I realize that you are likely more the messenger in this case. But you have been with us for about a year now, it seems, and so you've come to know Lane County well and our needs and our wants. We have more than once written in with comments and suggestions on the way in which OHCS is allocating funding without any response. Zero response. The transparency and inclusion from the county to OHCS has been dismal at best. Lane County has requested ReOregon funds be available to fund rental housing. And I understand that OHCS has no plans on rebuilding long-term rentals in the community. A large majority of people upriver were renters, and they deserve housing as well. We, of course, want to support a really diverse amount of housing options. And the most diverse we can get is with Homes for Good and rebuilding some of those modular homes for renters, and that's just not enough. It leaves a huge gap of survivors not being able to rebuild upriver. OHCS will build home ownership opportunities for those that were renting at the time of the fire, but we strongly support a holistic approach to home ownership and rental opportunities. It just can't be home ownership only to the full exclusion of rental housing. There are some households for whom home ownership is just not desired, nor is it feasible. And without that program to build rental housing, those families are literally left out in the cold. Lane County's requested ReOregon funds be made available on the outset to support recovery of households with incomes above 80% of AMI. OHCS has made it a policy decision to support households below AMI, 80% AMI first, and then if there's future funding to do the funding for those that are over 80% AMI. Given that most of the recovery funds are targeted to low and moderate income families only, those households just above 80% AMI are getting exceedingly little support. And over 3 years, they're devastated. Many have moved on, and they can't rebuild. They see no opportunity. They're either there trying to survive or they've left. Do you, more specifically with some questions, do you see any timeline for an eligibility income increase?
Thank you. As right now, I don't have a timeline that I could speak to. We haven't, once we dig into the phase one applicants and figure out what needs they have, that's kind of how we're going to start to determine when we can move to phase two. Making sure we serve that 80% or below, then we'll evaluate, project out what that needs to cover those.
But you don't know when you'll be evaluating that?
I would assume it'd be later this summer, once we have a slew of these first wave of applications go in.
Do you know the time frame for the rollout of the HOP program?
we're targeting for the end of the year or the first of next year. Just acknowledging that that 90-day substantial action plan amendment process.
So I just want to note that that's like 3.5 years after the fire. It's not acceptable. And we've given this feedback to OHCS. The timeline is too long for these survivors. And we need to speed things up. So as you mentioned, we know that you'll be going through the SAPA process. Do you know, like, the full timeline of that amendment process? How it's, I think you said it's 90 days, but when do you think you're going to start?
It would be following, so we're doing the rental survey and then convening with counties. And so once we've done those two things, the next step would be to submit the SAP.
30 days, 60 days?
I mean, after we have our internal county meetings?
That whole time plus?
Yeah, I'm not specifically sure on when, after we've met with all the individual counties throughout the state, how long it would be from that point until we're able to submit the action plan.
Okay. Do you know which programs will likely be amended?
I do not.
Have you heard any discussion amending the proportion of funds allocated in PEER?
No.
Okay, so we've made it really clear, and hopefully you've heard this in the meetings over the year, that we want more flexibility on that front. We have suggested different allocations to OHCS, of all of which have been refused, or at least at a very minimum, not responded to. So as I've worked with some of my peers in other fire-affected counties across the state to advise OHCS on the home ownership opportunities, rental programs, or the HOP program, I really have learned a lot from the differing needs from different communities. We're all very unique in what we need for our survivors. And we're wondering if OHCS will take a coordinating role for us as fire-affected communities to learn from each other and learn the lessons from the CDBG disaster recovery program in general. There needs to be a convening of some kind so that we can cross-reference and learn lessons from each other along with OHCS and get feedback to OHCS, not in one direction only, but we need OHCS to respond back to us. Because basically no response is ignoring what we need. It's ignoring our voice, leaving us out of possible discussions and advancing the needs of our community. A lot of decisions have been made internally at OHCS without inclusion of feedback. I'll note that OHCS has asked, what would you want? We tell them what we want. We don't get a response. We don't get the things included that we need. It works for some communities, doesn't work for other communities. We're highly frustrated. And the extension of the timelines make it worse so. And the fact is that survivors on the ground don't want to see any of this. They just need the money in their hands in order to rebuild and recover at a timely manner. And we're trying to help facilitate that, but we're not having a willing partner in OHCS at this time to make that happen. We are at the beck and call because OHCS has the purse strings, and we can't get that free. So hopefully you can take some of this feedback back up to Salem and see if we can facilitate a better partnership. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Kind of hard to follow what Commissioner Buck just brought up. I know you hear criticism regarding the speed of processing at OHCS is not something that's new, but I know that it is something that you are internally working on. I've heard that directly from Director Bell herself, and that this is something that is very important to OHCS, is to move things forward as quickly as possible without delay. And I'm confident that particularly with direct input from not just Commissioner Buck, but others who have similar messages, that you are working on that. That is my true, honest feeling. I believe that is really happening. Director Bell will be at an LGAC meeting on Friday this week, and Mike Savaro, Mike will be there also. But actually, that's not what I was going to talk about, Commissioner Buck, but thank you for bringing the very on-the-ground information forward. First thing I wanted to do is look to you, Mr. McRae. Thank you for the first thing that you said. You asked for our help. I pledge that help to you with the cultural awareness, the cultural response, and what is happening very specifically with the people who are living in conditions that they never expected to live on an ongoing fashion. That you mentioned that they don't have trees anymore, for instance, for cover. Some of the basic things that they've always had aren't there, and being sensitive to their needs is highly important. Thank you for that plea to us, and in response, you have my pledge of support in that any way that I can.
Thank you, Commissioner.
In my tiny, tiny little way, I drive up there every now and then. I live on the other end of the metropolitan area, but really getting things moving quickly as we can up there in that particular area for people who are significantly affected their entire lives, needless to say. I do have a couple of questions surrounding that. One is we have 517 houses or residences that were destroyed up there, and about 50% of them are in process at one point or another. Early on, we asked a question about not the registered residences, but the unregistered residences. The 517 refer to permanent housing that was in place. We know there were lots and lots of other people up there who weren't living in permanent housing. And I'm not going to ask you to respond at this point, but I'd like to see what has happened as far as registering those folks, understanding that many of them were living under the radar, off the grid, so to speak. But they were still in residences that was their primary residence. And at some point, if you could provide a little bit of an input on what is happening there, and if any recovery is happening in that area. And secondly, I had a question regarding, actually it's for you, Mr. Barrett. What better person to be working with OHCS than you? You've lived up there for how many years?
I lived in Blue River for 7 years as a teacher, coach, administrator, and worked at the school 9 years total.
And you were the AD also, I understand.
Correct,
Yeah,
yes.
so, I mean, you know life before, life during, and life after. So
Yeah, they're my
you
former
have,
students and colleagues and that sort of stuff.
And my point there is that you've seen the faces of people that are affected. You've known a lot of these kids, for instance, for a lot of years. So you know the deep effect that it's had on the community. Commissioner Buck's plea to move things forward, I don't think that's falling on deaf ears when you hear it. So
No, sir.
that was a bit of a softball, because I watched you listening, and you had kind of a look of intense awe on your face as you were listening to Commissioner Buck, as did I. The last question that I had, Ms. McRae, and it won't go on because we have a limited time on this, is regarding the sewage system in Blue River. I know that that's an issue, and that we have all kinds of considerations there, and you didn't have a long presentation on that today, and don't expect one. But I've heard of a company in Minnesota that I think you've heard of also, Fluence Corporation, that provides above-ground sewage treatment facilities, and I wonder if that's something that maybe we could have a report on at some point. Is that something that's viable? I don't know. I'm not pretending to know, but I do have that question. If there is something that is available and viable that's not conventional, we know we can't put it in the ground up there. The Blue River and the Mackenzie River are so very, very close, and there are so many considerations there. So at some point in the future, if you could give me maybe a little bit of a report back on that, if it's something that you have at your fingertips in particular.
Chair Trieger and Commissioner Farr, if I may, very quickly address that question. Yeah, I didn't dive into the issues around the wastewater treatment in Blue River, but as a very brief update, and of course there was more in the packet for those who are listening online. There's more in the board materials than the overview that I provided today. Our team at Public Works is just about to hire an engineering firm to design a two-phase wastewater treatment program or project, which would Each phase of that would manage up to 2,500 gallons per day of wastewater, which is approximately equivalent of each one would manage about the waste from about 8 homes. So we're looking at a total of about 16 homes that would be served by this system, at least initially. The hope is that one of the systems, or perhaps both of them, could expand over time. It depends on what we learn about the hydrology in the soils in the immediate area. And that study is going on. It will be wrapped up around September. And so we should have a greater understanding of the total number of homes that can be served by this system. But for the outset, it's 16 homes. So we are going into the engineering phase. Rob Woodard is the project lead there over at Public Works. I know he has heard about this Fluence product as well, but he's really the expert in terms of what kind of wastewater options are feasible, both financially and physically, in terms of serving the need of the Blue River community. Yeah. So if more detail is wanted there, Commissioner Farr, I'd be happy to take other questions to him and provide more in writing.
I've heard good reports on Mr. Woodard's work and his expertise in the area, and I have confidence that we're moving in the right direction. But 8 homes, soon to be 16, doesn't really scratch the surface of what's needed up there. So something longer term, something that, for instance, Commissioner Buckhart and I are both remain on the Homes for Good Board of Directors, so we understand the housing that's being replaced for Homes for Good. And how many units is that? That is, well, we don't need to go into the numbers right now, but understanding that we have a longer term need and something different is going to have to be prescribed if we're going to continue to have residences in that area that can adequately treat that sewage. Great work all along, and particularly that call for cultural. You didn't say awareness. You said sensitivity, I believe was the term that you used. But I really appreciate that you bring that forward, Mr. McRae.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Commissioner Seneca.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett, thanks for coming and presenting, and I think it's very clear this is a plea for help. I think we all get emotional when we go down 126, and as Mr. McRae said, there's RVs sitting out there just all by themselves. Used to be a small little cabin surrounded by trees. It was setting cultural expectations. Thank you. And yeah, I think we're all, I hope we've all been doing that along, and we can continue to bolster that. As I said, you drive by there, it used to be the prettiest drive in Oregon. And now you see an RV parked alongside a beautiful river whose porch is now Highway 126. It's disheartening to say the least. So, Mr. Barrett, I think if we can strive to start putting a dent in this, people are watching, and they tell us to be prepared for the next one. This hasn't been a great look for any of us at this point. I'm looking at 36% rebuilt from this fire, and I think we all know we could have done better. Now, I think Commissioner Farr was looking at my notes because I wanted to I wanted to ask about the septic systems as well. And I'm glad that was brought up, but 16 homes is nothing. And you go by and you look at all these cabins that are out there by themselves, and what are they going to do? We need to come up with something. There's got to be a system that can be done, that can be put in place. Maybe look at, I know Marion County's had some of those sensitive areas, and I'm sure we're in talks, but what we could do as a collaborative team, so we're all in that same boat. Commissioner Farr also brought up the 517 homes that we know about. I was wondering if, when you look into this, as he was asking, what that total number of structures that maybe weren't permitted or that people were living in that were, as it was said, off the radar. I'm just curious what that number was, so we can really grasp a total loss of roofs, which is what we're looking at.
Yeah, Chair Trigger, Commissioner Senaga, if I may, very briefly address a couple of your questions. One, when it comes to wastewater, that system that would treat 16 homes, again, hopefully that is able to be expanded once we learn more about the soils, but it's really to serve the downtown Blue River properties, which are especially small, and so have a hard time citing both a full-size home and a conventional septic system on those lots. I do want to acknowledge we have a septic grant program right now that does provide really generous incentives to help people replace or repair septic systems. We've been working with our partners at eWeb to make that program happen, and there's also funding from Oregon DEQ matching the funding that Lane County has put on the table there. So there are good incentives to enable people to rebuild on more dispersed lots. It's really the concentration of lots in downtown Blue River that's a particularly tough nut to crack. And I want to call out also that we're beholden to the three basin rule, which is unique to the Clackamas, Santiam, and McKenzie watersheds, that creates tighter restrictions on particularly pollutants going into the groundwater that would then affect the surface waters. And that's part of what is driving the constraints here in downtown Blue River. And then in terms of the number of unpermitted homes, I think it's a great question, and I just have two quick responses. One is, from my experience working in this area, I think it is around 100 households that were displaced. It's on that order. I'm not saying that's a precise estimate, but it's on the order, I think, of 100 households that were displaced that are not reflected in that 517. And then lastly, at this point, it's really, really difficult to wrap our hands around who those folks are, where they've gone. And the opportunity is at the time of the disaster when people are displaced. And I will tell you, we are working very hard to make sure that when we deal with large-scale displacement like we had at the Holiday Farm fire, right? We had hundreds of people moving out of the valley very quickly, and there was quite a bit of just a lot of chaos, right? Of all the movement. We were able to get a lot of people and capture information at some of the different stops on their way out of town or in places where they were sheltering temporarily. The Lane Event Center served that function. One of the challenges really is just the way in which we capture and share information among agencies that are at those different centers. We have to get better at that. We're working on getting better at that because that is the opportunity to have a better understanding than my best guess of around 100 homes. So we're working on that for next time. I don't have high hopes that we're going to get really good figures for this time. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Your comment when you started off, Matt, about living exposed and cultural expectations grinds me to a few just clarifying questions. And, Commissioner Buck brings up, Neil, some stinging rebukes and some things that we need to work on. And so I'm going to follow up and support that as well. I had a few just kind of detailed questions about the HOP Homeownership Opportunity Program. I would assume that that's not limited to finding a home in the affected area. How far does that reach?
Let's see. The policy isn't completely developed yet, but I think it would be other areas within Lane County. But I don't think it would stretch outside of that. But I'll jot that down and get clarification.
Yeah, I think that would be really good for the public to know how far that reaches and what the specifics are. And then I think also Commissioner Buck brought up a question that I kind of went, wow, I hadn't thought about that. But now I've got a question for you as to when she talks about having to rebuild rental properties, that there's a good number of rental properties. I would assume that landlords of rental properties are probably way outside the 80% AMI to qualify for any funds. And by the time they get to phase 3, there's probably nothing left. So I'm kind of wondering if in the future or for some topic of discussion for the future would be to say, there was a certain percentage of rental properties that were lost. Perhaps there should be some funds set aside to rebuild those rental properties and have some sort of partnerships with the former landlords of those properties that could build those. That's something that we've never done, nor have ever heard of that. Have you?
No, sir.
Yeah, that would probably be worth investigating. I think that would be a good question I'd like to have asked too. And I think, too, Matt, I think optimistically, just as I'm looking at the cost of money and the cost of construction and all the other hurdles and, Commissioner Buck again talking about how many years this has been, I'm thinking we're about capped out of what we're going to build. I think the best case scenario is we may get 37% when this is all said and done. So what do we do with that as a community? How do we move forward with that? And how do we reinvest in that area, both economically and residentially, to make that place whole again? Or is it one of those things where we just learn a hard lesson that we're not going to be able to make that place whole and we'll learn better next time? I think that's something the public would probably want to know as well. The last thing I have is kind of a specific question of when I was there touring, when we were there last spring, or last summer rather, and looking up behind the park on that hill. There was a lot of talk about that at that time, about trying to reinvent who Blue River was, trying to reinvent a footprint economically of what they could grab in the tourism market and that sort of thing. And that whole hillside was talked about a donation. I believe it was from a family who had owned that. They were thinking about donating that to Blue River, or it already had been. What's the status of that particular property and all those dead snags up there?
Yeah, Chair Trieger, Commissioner Lovell, that particular parcel, I don't know the status on, but I will find out for you, sir, and get you an update by email if that works.
Yeah, it'd be great. They were talking about extending that park system into there and making bike trails and all that kind of stuff, which I thought was a great idea, but wow, dangerous operation to clear that piece of property and make it safe for tourism. So yeah, those are my other questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but they are minor, and they're really for our own staff, who we have terrific access to, who is always quite responsive and thorough in their responses and prompt. And so I will just reserve those and send you an email or come downstairs and chat with you another time, because they're really just sort of administrative questions that I don't want to take up the board's time with today. And so what I want to do with my time is circle us back to the comments Commissioner Buck made and really center them and elevate them and underline them and do everything I can to ensure that the comments she made land. And the only thing that she didn't address in her comments is it matters for so many reasons, but another reason it matters is because when we don't get responsiveness from our state agencies, our community members, our residents here in Lane County don't know that's why, and they don't want us to tell them it's because the state isn't doing. So it erodes trust of our own constituents in us and in this local government, who is doing everything it can, has invested millions of dollars in underwriting the cost of permits by waiving those fees. And in particular, the incredible work that Commissioner Buck has done on the ground in her community to help these families and households who are trying to recover and survive this horrific event. So it has impacts far-reaching beyond the individual householders who have not gotten what they are due. So thank you, Commissioner Buck, for your very clear and important comments on this topic. I appreciate them very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Trigger.
That concludes this item. Thank you.
Chair.
We do have need of executive session, but before that, I will look to County Administration to see if there are any announcements for this morning.
Chair Trieger, Commissioners, just two very quick announcements. I did want to let you know I do not have an elections update. I will have one next Tuesday, except for the quick news that there is now a star voting FAQ on the website. The County Clerk's Office is getting calls and questions about star voting and the impact it would have on Lane County elections. There's a document now, and I'll make sure that, oh, look at that. Great staff. There it is. It's a two-page document, goes through some of the misconceptions, I think, that are out there in terms of how the processing of ballots would work. I know this document was delivered to the Secretary of State and has the safe harbor validation on it. So please, as you have constituents that are asking questions about star voting, send them to the website, and we'll make sure everybody gets that link. I think other than that, just very quickly, today is the day that we will be submitting the first application, the easy application for the deflection program. That is in the aftermath of Measure 110. Counties that wanted to be early adopters could submit an application for funding to create that deflection program to add to all of our diversion efforts. This deflection takes place at the point of officer contact with an individual engaged in unlawful behavior and can make a determination which path to go, whether that person is going to get cited or jailed, or whether that person is going to receive a handoff into treatment. With that application in, we do expect the state to turn around and have the first half of the funding, a tranche of about $900,000 to us at the start of June. So a nice deadline, and the program is underway. As you are aware, the county has decided two things about the deflection program. One is it's going to be housed in Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services, and two, we have asked, and he has agreed, Clint Riley, upon his retirement as the jail commander, is going to lead our deflection program, and we are very grateful and excited to have his participation in that program. All of the work of designing the program now starts when we bring in partners that include behavioral health, treatment, peer support, and law enforcement, as well as the justice system. We will design this together. That's it for my report.
Great, thank you so much. As I said, we do have need of executive session, so I will read us in, and then we will be back here for public session at 1:30 p.m. in Harris Hall. At the sound of my gavel, we will recess and move into executive session. I'm going to give us a 5-minute transition time. The Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection and to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602F and ORS 192.6602H, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are precluded from attending. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Members of the news media are not allowed to tape, video record, or otherwise record an executive session. Verbatim notes are prohibited. No decision will be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back out into public session should the need arise. At the sound of my gavel, we will recess and move into executive session, convening at 11:07 a.m.